My guest today, Jesse Simpson, is an ex-Marine, a former firefighter, and now an entrepreneur who helps other entrepreneurs get access to credit that they might not get otherwise. Now, I'm going to tell you, when we got into this interview, I started to feel conflicted about the way he helps provide credit to entrepreneurs. And we go deeper on that. And I ask him some tough questions, but I really appreciate how he stood in the pocket and he answered in how he believes he is helping entrepreneurs. And I think he is. I do think he is. But good interview, maybe a little controversial in how he services entrepreneurs. But we do talk about our financial system and the fact that it's a fiat-based currency, which, as you probably know, means it's not backed by any gold or silver or anything else. And we talk about just how unstable the market actually is and what he feels are imperatives that you need to take if you want to protect yourself and protect your family and any wealth that you've built. Enjoy this one. Jesse is a former U.S. Marine and firefighter who traded his childhood dream job for a one-way flight to Costa Rica. He's an entrepreneur and now the co-founder and chief freedom architect of a company called Abundance Codes, where he helps business owners fund their startup or scale their business without spending their own money. So I'm sure a lot of you, your ears just perked up because you're thinking about taking that leap right now, and Jesse may have the pathway to do that. So without further ado, Jesse, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Roger. Excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure, my pleasure. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm looking forward to talking about abundance codes and especially leverage and how you help people get into business. But if you could take us back, because at some point in your life, you made a decision to buy a one-way ticket to Costa Rica. Not everybody does that. So what was happening in your life? What was going on? Just give us a little bit of the background story if you could.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's funny because there's moments in all of our lives where we make one decision and our life can end up in a completely different direction. And of course, taking a one-way flight to Costa Rica is one of those big ones for me. But the backstory on that, my background's military and fire service as a Marine. Ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a Marine and firefighter. Ever since 7th grade, I was in 7th grade on 9/11. And that really inspired me to want to serve something larger than myself. So I went on that path, did the Marine thing, did the fire thing, and really started to, there's this idea of like what you think it's going to be. And then it was a lot different when I got on the ground in the Marines, but more so in the fire department. Whereas we're not doing as much firefighting. That's 3% of the calls as compared to like medical calls and stuff like that. So I had a lot of things that happened around the same exact time. My best friend from the Marines died of a heroin overdose. And, he really was the guy that brought me out of myself in the Marines and allowed me to have fun and relax. And we got in trouble, but we did what young adolescent Marines do. And we had a lot of fun doing it. Yeah. So when I lost him in November of 2016, it really forced me in a way to take ownership of an idea that I had bubbling up inside of me to help bridge the gap between veterans and troubled youth, essentially pairing them up in a mentorship component as in what that looked like as a nonprofit. So I started a nonprofit as a firefighter in 2017 and was really going all in on this, burning both ends of the stick. As a firefighter, working on one of the busiest ladder trucks in the country, we're going on traumatic calls. We're the biggest challenge through all of that is the sleep deprivation. You're getting up 4, 5, 6 times a night sometimes. And then I would just run right over into my entrepreneur stuff, going to networking meetings and trying to get my business up and off the ground. And that led to a lot of recognition, a lot of essentially like podcasts and newspaper features and these sort of things. I was really feeling good, feeling on purpose. And that lasted for about 6 months. And really the pinnacle of that was being recognized as the Arizona State Firefighter of the Year in September of 2017. So I spoke in front of hundreds of firefighters of the State Fire School, pinnacle of the profession, my childhood dream job, all these sort of outside things were boxes were checked.
Yeah. But
I was burning out. And I was starting to struggle a lot emotionally. A lot of the sleep deprivation was catching up with me at this point. And I was really, a lot of things from my past experiences as a child, my Marine Corps traumas, all these things started to bubble up. plus the traumas I was seeing on the job and the disconnection I was feeling, that sort of frustration I mentioned when in the beginning, where there's things that I thought I was going to be, but then I got there and I'm not doing what I thought. All these things started compounding. And then October 2017, there was, my older brother had cancer. He was getting sicker. My mom lost her job. Some personal things were happening. And the last straw for me, Roger, was in October 2017. There was that shooting in Las Vegas, Nevada. Yep. And, I was a machine gunner in the Marine Corps, and I thought I was doing that to prevent that from happening here. And when that happened, on top of all those other things that were going on, it really made me settle. I mean, really, I went to this deep depression and was just like had this crisis where, like, what is happening? My entire reality was breaking down. The illusion was being revealed. And I pulled the brakes on the nonprofit, would send me into a deeper depression because I was feeling like that was my purpose. That was the thing. And I just sat there for a couple months feeling sorry for myself, struggling a lot in my relationships, and just everything was happening all at once. And ultimately, I had this moment where I thought about this trip I went to Lima, Peru in 2013 when I was transitioning out of the Marines, where from my perspective, the three biggest things when people leave the service: loss of purpose, loss of camaraderie, and that connection and the structure and these sort of things. But I found purpose in being of service. And that started with a volunteer trip to Lima, Peru, where I worked at this orphanage. And I went down there thinking I'm going to help these kids. I'm a combat veteran. I'm American, like whatever I thought what I was going to bring. And those kids who had sticks and balls and dirt to play with, that's all. They lived in shacks. But the biggest smiles I'd ever seen, it was clear. They changed me.
Yeah.
And they set me on this mission to volunteer and these sort of things. And that's where the nonprofit came in. But ultimately, when I was struggling, I had that flavor, what was probably one of the first authentic experiences of my life, being in there in Peru. I had this call to go back. And I felt like, I was sick of looking forward to retirement, like pretty standard, and whether you're in corporate America or in the fire service or any comfortable job, just keep doing it and collect retirement, decades in the future. And I was at a point where it was either this is going to be my destiny, I'm going to feel miserable about myself for the rest of my life, or I'm going to make a change. I'm going to go figure out who I am and why I'm here. So that really was what led to the decision to move to Costa Rica. That was it. I declared it as a verbal commitment to a couple other firefighters I was talking to on New Year's Eve going into 2018. I said, I'm going to Costa Rica. And me saying that out loud started this process that there's no way I could have planned, but transpired into me a few months later, taking that one-way flight to Costa Rica, no real plans ever coming home, going on this mission to figure out who I am and why I'm here.
Wow. Jesse, I just want to applaud you for the courage, just how openly you talk about mental health and some of the struggles that you had with mental health. Men don't talk about it enough. Masculine men talk about it even less. And I think that makes it even more dangerous because we won't talk about it. And so just before we get deeper into the interview, just thank you for being so open with that, because more men need to be comfortable in saying, man, I've been in deep, dark places, or, I am in a deep, dark place. And that's when they should say it the most. I really appreciate that. You end up, if my notes are correct, you end up not just going to Costa Rica, you end up backpacking the world for 2 years. Is this, what is that? Maybe my timeline's a little off, but so you go down there and tell me about that.
Well, Costa Rica. So we did 4 months in Costa Rica, 2.5 months in Peru, 2 months in Colombia, then 8 weeks backpacking through Europe. And then we traveled around the States for a while. And then that basically took us up to COVID. So we had plans abroad beyond that too, but COVID happened, of course. So we readjusted. But yeah, I went on this adventure, and all those steps that I just described, we had no idea that those were going to be where we went. We had the first step. And honestly, this has just been my experience. One of the biggest lessons I've learned has been around faith and trust. And what I've realized is when I made that commitment, that verbal commitment to take ownership of my life, I had no idea what was going to happen, but each time I took a step, the next step would always appear. And so that led to this beautiful journey throughout Central and South America. And there's so many things that happened. So I'm happy to go any direction with you, but that was the layout of the time traveling.
I guess what I would love to get your take on is, I have found that whenever I've traveled internationally, I was in a graduate course, and we one part of it was going to Europe, and my professor was from Ghana, and I remember him saying, "Now look, before we go over here, and we were going to go visit companies and then do tourism stuff during the day," but he said, "Don't look at it as better or worse than America or what you have. Look at it as different, right? It's just different, and it's unique." And that was such a beautiful perspective to go see other foreign countries and foreign businesses and the way they operate. And now that I've done other international traveling, it's really helped me enjoy and embrace versus compare. And I think as Americans, sometimes we have things so great, it's easier for us to compare. So I would just love to get your take on, as you traveled to so many places, and you're in this different frame of mind, sounds like a very open frame of mind and accepting, how did you experience those different countries, and what was the takeaway from, a couple of those different stops? I'm sure there's, hours and hours of cool stories, but if you could share it with us and the listeners and myself, maybe some of the experiences that really touched your heart as you went to some of these different places.
Yeah, there's so much, and I don't want to just hop over Costa Rica because it's such a beautiful country, but just for the sake of moving this conversation along, and highly recommend Costa Rica for everybody. If you love beaches, mountains, waterfalls, it's a really nice place. But going to Peru, there's a lot of like big cycles in my life that felt like there was closure to them. For example, we spent time in the way we traveled. Actually, for anyone who loves to travel, one of the ways that I did it was through volunteer exchange or work exchange. There's a website called workaway.info. And essentially what this work exchange is you're volunteering at a house or a hostel or bed and breakfast, like whatever it would be on a farm. And then you're able to stay there. Or sometimes they give you food and these sort of things. And what I really loved, and why we spent so much time in those three first countries, essentially 8 months in 3 countries in Latin America, was because you really got to get immersed in the culture, and really got to just like get a local's perspective and take on life there and what it's really like, instead of just hopping from one city to the next like we did in Europe, where it's just 3 days later we're in a different city or country. But to your question here, one of those big cycles, we spent a month at a bed and breakfast in the Andes Mountains in Peru in the Sacred Valley. We ended that with a trek through the Machu Picchu, the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu. And just going back right now, the last, if anybody's been to Machu Picchu, you can either ride the bus or the train up there, or you can hike in 4 days to the Andes Mountains to get up there. And when we were there in December, it was supposed to be the rainy season, but we had perfectly beautiful weather the entire time until that last morning, when we were hiking in. You get up super early, you walk the last couple miles hiking up to Machu Picchu, and you look down over what's called the Sun Gate into Machu Picchu. And it was raining on us, pouring down rain. But just as we got up to the Sun Gate, the sun was starting to come up. It broke the clouds. Although it was still raining down, a rainbow came across the sky over Machu Picchu. And it just sort of looks like this moment of like, wow, this is why I did this. Yeah. Like we're being supported, this unbelievable beauty. But Peru, so going along that, we worked at a hostel in Lima, Peru. And it was just really cool for me because January of 2019, I was there, which was 6 years to the date when I was there that first time when I worked at that orphanage. And it was just like one of those things where I was like, man, looking back, I'm proud of the journey I've been on. I'm proud of myself for taking this step, this leap of faith. And I feel like I'm being supported. And from there, Colombia, and this is where I can settle and pass it back to you, Roger. But Colombia is just, I think, the most underrated, misunderstood country in the world. And, when people think of Colombia, even now, when I hear when I talk about it, people have this sort of like visceral reaction, and they think of Netflix or Narcos or kidnapping or cocaine and like
Sure.
these sort of things.
Sure.
And that's fine. You know, that's appropriate. There is that world there, of course, just as it is anywhere in the United States for sure as well. But what I found in Colombia was just the most warming, welcoming people you could ever meet. And the jungles, the beaches, the waterfalls are incredible. Medellin, Colombia used to be the most dangerous city in the world back when Pablo Escobar was in his heyday, but it transformed into the most innovative city in the world. And it has a really bustling, lively culture of people that have transmuted all the trauma and violence that used to be there into arts and music and dance and other forms of expression that has this really beautiful area in the city called Comuna 13 that is just full of graffiti art that's beautiful, world-class, and dancers and break dancers and all kinds of things going on. And it really just shifted my perspective. And a couple of quick stories I'll share on that.
Yeah.
It was the way we like to travel was each time we went to a new city, we do a walking tour so we can get a local's perspective of what this place is all about. And although my wife, she's my girlfriend at the time, she went on this adventure with me. She had a lot of fear. I'm a big dude. I'm a Marine. I've been around the world a little bit, and I'm like not walking around with like a bunch of external fear. Yeah. But I got a totally different perspective for women who are traveling. And we did meet some single women travelers, which I have a lot of respect for that because it's just a different environment. It's just a different perspective. And I really felt that. But my wife going there in Colombia, the first night we went out for her birthday was in January, and she was visibly big city, Medellin. There's graffiti on the walls. It's dark, you know, big concrete buildings like any big city. Like didn't look friendly at first. And, you know, she was just visibly anxious and like scared to go out and get dinner. Well, the next day we survived. The next day we go on our walking tour, and on that tour, walking through and learning about the history of Medellin, 5 people came up to us and they said, "Welcome to Colombia. Thank you for coming." This guy literally ran across the street. Big guy. He had a big gold chain. You know, he had a huge smile on his face though. And he ran up with his hands up and he gave me a big high five. And he goes, "Welcome to Colombia. Thank you for coming." And then my home is your home. And this sort of feeling on that one walking tour with 5 people coming up to us was really just the starting point of we lived there for 2 months. And that was our experience over and over again. And just being welcomed and invited and received and just really shifted the perspective on the idea of what people think a place is, Colombia in this case, but the reality on the ground is drastically different from my experience. And really it's that country, and seeing my wife come to this moment where we were riding on these cable cars after a beautiful day, met some locals. We went back on this hiking trail park, basically outside Medellin. I'm looking at my wife, the sun's shining down on her and her face. She's kind of looking off to the side, and I'm like, "Babe, what are you thinking?" And she looked at me dead in the eyes, Roger, and she goes, "I'm just not going to fear death anymore."
Oh, wow.
And I know you don't know my wife, and that's fine, but she's not someone that would ever have said that ever. It would totally took me by surprise.
Yeah.
And it would just really solidified that something bigger is happening here. And it was in that moment I decided that's going to be my wife, and it just really started this desire to want to support people in bridging this gap. I see myself as a bridge connecting people with what I believe is a little bit more close to the reality than all this media and what we're thought to think about things.
Yep.
And that inspired the idea to I eventually started a travel company and hosted retreats in Colombia, but that's one of the countries that had a big impact on me. There's a bunch of other people I met that I could share more specifics, but just in general, if you're on the fence about Colombia, I encourage you to go and really experience the warmth and love and the transformation that has happened there.
Yeah. My aunt married a Colombian, and it's funny. My first thought is, "Oh my God, the guy's involved in cocaine." Well, you know, and she's like, "You have such a warped view of how beautiful and wonderful and amazing this country is and the people are." But you know, we believe too much what we see on TV and what's sensationalized, quite frankly, what's sensationalized. This segment is sponsored by Rockbox Fitness Franchising. Take control of your destiny and join the boutique fitness revolution with Rockbox Fitness. If you're ready to make a real impact in your community and own your own business that empowers people to achieve their best life, then Rockbox is the opportunity you've been looking for. They provide comprehensive support from site selection, upfit, training, and turnkey marketing, so you can open your studio with confidence and a strong recurring revenue member base. Visit rockboxfitness.com and click on franchise opportunities to learn more about this exciting venture in the fast-growing boutique fitness industry. It's time to turn your passion for fitness and for business into a thriving venture. Let's transition then into your mission with abundance codes. If I understand this correctly, and so please, I want your full explanation on this, but what I understand is your mission with abundance codes is to help entrepreneurs fund their business without using their own money. And so one, I would like to get clarity around exactly what that mission is, but also what exactly does your company do? And most importantly, what inspired you for that to be your mission? Because I'm probably putting words in your mouth, but it seems like you went on this, I'm going to call it a walkabout. I know that's not what it is, but almost like this walkabout and had this epiphany of wanting to serve. And that has manifested itself now in your business abundance codes to help other people. So, is that a correct assumption? And then tell us about it.
100%. It really is. And, looking back, so we do credit repair and business funding, and I'll happily share and tie everything in here. But I never would have thought, I'd be doing credit repair. I didn't even know what that really was, actually, not until not too long ago. But then as I got into it, when this sort of realization, this sort of vision came up with that is now abundance codes, it's my entire life has been fighting for freedom and serving my community. And I know right now the biggest block from freedom for most people is their finances. I think it's going to get worse. I think inflation is going to continue to kick up, and who knows what else. And the biggest and best opportunity within that is to empower entrepreneurs with the funding they need to start or scale their business, so they don't have to risk their personal assets or credit or capital. And we've structured our business in a way where we've reduced essentially all barriers to entry for this, whether you're starting or scaling. You just need to have a credit score that's 740 or above. And if you're not there, we can help you get there. So we've really done our best to, again, I want to be a bridge. Our team is a bridge to help people get access to funding that they need to scale their vision and really make something of their life. If they want to make a big leap of faith on their career, or they have something that's working and they need funding to get that going, then they can scale without having to, again, risk their own personal capital.
When you're providing capital and access to capital, you said they don't have to risk their own capital. Are there still personal guarantees associated with that capital though? Or is this like untethered capital that they're able to get? If you could just talk a little more detail about that.
Yeah, 100%. So there is a personal guarantee towards it. That's why the personal credit score matters, but it's unsecured debt, and there's no business documentation required. And what we're doing, Roger, is we're just leveraging the 0% interest introductory offer on business credit cards. These are business credit cards. It's just an introductory offer. It's 0%, which is incredibly massive. And I'll share a bit how I got into that. But basically, it's 0% for anywhere from 6 to 18 months. So half a year to a year and a half of runway to get your wheels turning, get your vision off the ground and going. And then it goes into high interest credit card debt, right? So it's important to understand that, and it's not the best fit for everyone, but there's a lot of use cases that there are here. And to be clear on the value that we provide is significantly higher amounts. And what I mean by that, so what we're talking about with that is $50,000 to $200,000 or more in 0% interest credit, which lasts 6 to 18 months. And the value we provide is those larger amounts. And one of our perfect use case or case study for this is one of our clients named Vince. Vince had a business. It was 3 years old. His credit score is good. And he went to Chase Bank, who has 2 0% interest business credit cards, both of which are 0% for 12 months. He went by himself and got his own business credit card, and he got a $5,100 limit. And that's nice, but when you're getting up and going,
It's not going to do a lot.
You might need a little bit more than $5,100, right? So
Yeah.
he came to us, and same Vince, same business. We optimize his credit within that a little bit, but otherwise it's the same thing all around. We got him $80,000 on the other Chase business credit card. So a lot of our clients are looking for $100,000 or more for whatever purpose. A lot of people are scaling their business, or we actually have a lot of e-commerce people who are on these net 30, 60, and 90-day terms where they have to essentially maintain operations and employee or salaries and all these things for up to 90 days before they get paid from their supplier. So this is a perfect use case for that.
How did you get into this? So this is very different from anything you've ever done. Usually I found that an entrepreneur is solving a problem that he or she has faced first. And then they realize, hey, there's white space here. Like I have a problem. I figured out a solution for it. I think other people would actually pay for the solution. How did you get into this?
Yeah, great question. So I didn't get into that on the journey, but I'll go back on my journey. So I left the fire service to go travel. I was actually going to grad school online too. That was kind of like, I had to make justifications in my mind, like trade-offs. So I went to grad school online, but I also started a coaching company. And so that was my second business, I guess, after the nonprofit, and was going to help people navigate major life transitions and then do leadership coaching and these sort of things. But I did that, and I used my firefighter pension, went through 20K pretty quickly. And then I used my life savings. And so at the end of that, I, had pretty much nothing to my name. And then I mentioned briefly that I really felt called to support people in bringing them down to retreats in Colombia. And I did that. And it was unbelievably impactful for me and the people that were there. On a lot of cases, it was a beautiful opportunity. And I was using my own personal credit to fund that. And retreats are, the margins are pretty slim, and just where I was at that point, essentially I was trying to pay for my everyday expenses, my life expenses, with a business that wasn't yet making money using my personal credit. And that got me in that messed up my credit. It got me in this cycle of bad debt. I'm paying off large chunks of these credit cards, and I was somehow still maxed out at the end of the month. And it really forced me, and this is around COVID. COVID opened up a lot for me. And one of this particular areas that I wanted to go deeper into is the financial system itself. And that's what I did. And I learned a lot about it, but I felt like the best opportunity was the credit, because if I was starting all over again, what I would have done, instead of using my life savings or my investment or my pension in this case, I would have leveraged business credit, 0% interest, because of the worst case scenario, I would be in the exact same situation a year later when it was time to pay that off as I was in that moment. Yeah. But best case scenario, I'm going to have my savings and be paying that debt off with a business that's going, because I had this extra capital to get up and going. Because most businesses fail 90% within the first 2 years due to undercapitalization. Yep. And I didn't have a solution for that problem. And then scaling is also, like I mentioned briefly, but that's basically my journey into it. It's like, I'm struggling with this. How do I get off the ground? I'm $5,100. What is that going to do? So I dove into the financial system, learning about how our country operates in that way, learning more about credit, and then just clicked one day where I was like, wait, 0%. Why didn't I leverage this before? Yeah. So now that's what we're helping people do.
Gotcha. And there's a tie-in to veterans as well, right? Like there's a tie-in with, are you more targeted towards helping veterans, or is it really anybody that's looking to scale or start their business you're interested in working with?
We're not favoring veterans by any means, but I would love to support veterans. And really what I'm looking to do with this business is support visionaries, community leaders, entrepreneurs. I'm personally driven. You can't really see how the camera is, but I have my wife and my daughter back here. I have a 13-month-old daughter and a son on the way. But when I had my daughter last year, everything shifted in my life where I had been traveling. It was nice. It was cool hosting retreats in Colombia. That felt nice. But everything shifted when my daughter was born. And my focus shifted from like having a good time and figuring out who I am to building wealth for my family so I can leave a lasting legacy for her. Mm-hmm. And what I believe is necessary, and what an entrepreneur has, is a vision of something that's different than right now. And that entrepreneur, that visionary, that community leader is responsible, I believe, to make that vision manifest in this reality. And we live here and we need funding for that. Sure. So my mission, more than favoring a veteran or any particular demographic, other than just community leaders and entrepreneurs that need funding to scale their vision, is to really solve that scarcity problem, that funding problem, and provide that access to capital that they otherwise wouldn't be able to get.
Yeah. Jesse, let me ask you, because I am a guy that I avoided debt aggressively my whole life. I had a mortgage, but that would be about it. And then now I've scaled some businesses, and I asked you about the personal guarantees, honestly, a little selfishly, because I've got a lot of personal guarantees on the leverage that I have that I needed to be able to build these businesses. As you know, it takes money to build a business, flat out. There's no way around that. And when I hear 0%, of course, that's outstanding. But when I hear 23%, or 18% high interest rate on consumer debt, that makes me a little shy. So do you have a program, a pathway to help these people? Because what would be terrible is if they get into a $200,000 loan for 0%, they misfire, and now they've got 23% interest on that $200,000. So how do you help them avoid that? Because the upfront, brother, you're doing great things. It's the back end that could get scary for somebody. But I'm sure you've already thought through that. And I'm just curious, like, how you help them avoid that.
100%, Roger. This is a totally appropriate conversation and question, and I think it needs to be addressed. And what I'll say is maybe, maybe just different than what people would originally think. And I had to go through this big process around this because I feel a sense of responsibility for my entrepreneurs that are in this, because for all those reasons that you had just shared. And ultimately, there's going to be a percentage, that aren't able to get back. But I'll be honest, Roger, that part of that awakening that I experienced in the financial system itself, it really brought a lot of things to light that totally shifted my perspective. And this might be confronting to people, but the way I'll say it is, the first thing I learned was that we have a fiat currency. It's not backed by anything.
Yeah.
And it's not actually real. Our money holds value based off of consensus, which means we agree that this has value so we can make exchanges. And I was starting to learn a bit more about what that meant. And then I looked in the Constitution. I was reading a lot of books on the Constitution to kind of figure out, what's going on here. Freedom's the driving force in my life. And I'm realizing finances, for me in that moment, was the biggest block from that freedom. I was waking up in hot sweats, oh my God, what am I going to do? Yeah. And I started to go down into this. And then I reading through Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, it states that no government can make anything but gold or silver coin repayment for debts or something like that. I just messed up that last part there. But essentially what we're doing is we're not paying off our debts. We're kind of passing around this currency. And that kind of opened up another rabbit hole. But ultimately, the way I see it is there's an opportunity to use what I would call a fake fiat currency sent to us on a plastic credit card to scale our business, acquire assets, whatever it is we need to do to provide wealth for our family. Mm-hmm. And of course, the opportunity is to go all in and make something real. That is the best opportunity, because what we have as alchemy is what we're doing. We're alchemizing something that's coming to us on a plastic credit card into something real that can provide for us and our family. And my intention is to leave a legacy for my daughter because I'm able to do this, and to help as many people as possible along the way. Now, the mechanism, what I've realized is of control, comes with the credit score. And that's when I learned about credit repair. Yeah. And essentially, the way I see it is it's time to go all in. Businesses fail. There's all kinds of things when this happens. You're talking about worst case scenario, by the way. So I want to just make the disclaimer. I'm not saying get this to fail. I'm
Sure.
saying worst case scenario, since this is not tied to anything, what I recommend is everyone get a trust set up and established and operate in the private. So they use this money on their business and they go all in. In worst case scenario, if they fail, that debt eventually, go as a personal guarantor. It will roll over to the personal side. It will go to collections. And then eventually they'll try to negotiate down. And then essentially, you'll need credit repair to remove that.
How are you defining credit repair? Like what exactly are you defining as credit repair?
Yeah. So credit repair. So basically what happens when you stop paying on credit cards is you'll have late payments.
Yep.
And then by law, after 6 months, that debt is then sold to a collection company. And so what that would look like on a credit score would be late payments and then derogatory remarks and or collections, or charge-offs and these sort of things. So that's going to hurt someone's credit score. But essentially, that since there's the banks aren't actually giving us any, they're not like going back to their safe and sending us money. They're literally sending us a piece of plastic with potential on it that can be used to scale this business or acquire assets or whatever it needs to do. And since there's nothing physically attached to it, we've been off the gold standard, since the 70s, and there's way more U.S. history that really was revealing to me about the whole timeline of the United States since that Constitution. But basically, that's what it means. And with the personal guarantor, that business debt would roll over to the personal side as late payments, as derogatory remarks. Otherwise, you can max out $100,000 or more in 0% interest business credit or credit cards or whatever funding, and it's separated. So it's on the business side. It won't negatively impact the personal.
Yeah. All right. So because I understand what you're doing, and now I'm trying to, as a host, determine whether I agree or disagree with this. Right? Like, it doesn't make me or you right or wrong. I'm trying to understand because, one, I think our whole financial system is upside down and screwed. Like, I think we can agree on that. Like, there's just the more I learn about our economy, the more I learn about the duct tape and chicken wire that keeps it together. It scares the heck out of me. And this is from a guy, coming from a guy who's worked my tail off to acquire a fair bit of wealth. And I realize how fake all that is, it's and how just unsteady the whole thing is. The other part of me is the kid that was raised, to not have debt, to always, if you can't buy it twice for cash, don't do it, all that kind of stuff. And again, I've not done that when I've built these businesses. I've realized I needed to lever and lever up, and I believe I've done it responsibly. But I guess I'm ethically conflicted knowing that someone could take out $200,000, and I get the whole trust separated business, but somebody could take out $200,000 of a loan and then default on that. And I know it gets written down and then you negotiate it off. At the end of the day, somebody's got to pay for that in a higher interest rate, pay for it in higher banking fees, pay for it. And at the end of the day, higher taxes, because we always bail out the damn banks. So that always comes back to Mr. and Mrs. Taxpayer. So I guess my toughest question to you would be, who do you say no to then when they come to you and you just think they're going to go buy a Ferrari with this, or they're going to go buy, they're going to go fly private to Vegas and blow it in a club. And I know this is going to get negotiated down, or they're actually going to use this to go try to, create better water filtration systems that can help, people that don't have good drinking water, like very, very different uses of that credit. Right. And two different risks, one worth taking, one not. So do you say, we don't believe in your business, we can't get behind that?
Yeah, first want to just acknowledge, totally understand what you're saying, and just as a disclaimer from my side, is I'm 100% not encouraging that whatsoever. As far as like recklessness, what I'm saying is worst case scenario. Yeah, that's essentially what would happen. But to answer your question, what we do is we go through a screening process. We get clear on what your vision is, how much funding you're looking for, how this is going to contribute to that vision. And we do have those conversations before you're even coming on, because we're not, we want people to succeed. That's the best opportunity. And right now, like you're talking about the financial system, like that I believe is a mechanism of control. And I believe inflation is going to get worse, and it's going to really pinch the middle class more and more and make it very, very difficult to get groceries.
Yeah.
But we have an opportunity right now. And I think the solution to that personally is to acquire assets, get assets that will increase in value with inflation so that you can be protected to a certain extent, from that, what I believe is inevitable inflation. But yeah, we do a bit of a due diligence, but ultimately it's up to the person. It's their risk profile. Of course, taking on debt is not something that everyone feels comfortable with. And then I would say, okay, then you're not going to be a good fit for this. But some people have net 30, 60, or 90-day terms that they need to cash flow, or they have something that's working and they're ready to scale their business and they need some ads to kick in and get going. And then with ad spend, you have clear payback to that, and you're paying this off because there's a whole kinds of benefits to leveraging business credit. So this is really the best fit for someone who's really clear on their vision, or they've got something that's working and they just need that capital to inject into it to really take it off the ground and go to the next level.
That makes sense. I'm glad you cleared that up, because I can see if somebody, I actually have done businesses brick and mortar that you need ad spend and lots of it to get it going, to get it in front of it before you collect your revenue. And, once you get that wave going, then you're ahead of it, but you have to have the capital to get that wave. And that makes more sense. I'm thinking of the average 22-year-old entrepreneur on the internet. I need 200 grand. And that I can't philosophically get on board with, but somebody that has built up, even if they're 22, if they built a business and they need capital that they just don't have, that does make sense. And as you were talking, at the end of the day, I would say it is up to the lending institution that issues that debt for the final yes or no. So they're making the decision. It's you're bringing them to the table, but it's the institution that's going to make that decision. This segment is sponsored by Beamlight Sauna Franchising. Are you looking to take control of your destiny and own your own business? Do you want a great brand in a rapidly growing market? Well, Beamlight Sauna is a nationwide health and wellness franchise with amazing opportunities in select markets. You can bring the power of infrared sauna and red light therapy to your community while you build a thriving business. Beamlight Sauna offers support that includes site selection, build out, even pre-launch programs and turnkey marketing, so you can open your studio with a large recurring revenue member base. To learn more about business ownership and franchise opportunities in the fast-growing health and wellness space, go to beamlightsauna.com. That's BEEM lightsauna.com and click on franchise opportunities to learn more. So is it, and you don't have to get super specific, but I would imagine your business model is there's a finder's fee, a service fee, something application, help and process fee, because you have to be able to make money at this. Everybody has to make money. Like everybody has to make money for the economy to go around. And so is it just like a percentage or some kind of fee that you are able to reap from that?
Yeah, essentially. And really my goal with abundance codes, it's a whole state of being abundance, it's really something I've been trying to connect with more and more and really in my team, just really instill that within them. And really the idea is that we're all everyone who comes within our sphere of influence is going to experience abundance, whether that be referrals or the team, or of course the clients when they're getting this funding they need to scale their business. But the answer to your question is essentially we make pretty much all of our money in the backside, and the intention with that as a percentage, and the intention with that is to help people get this funding without having to spend their own capital. So that's our goal. That's what we accomplish. It does cost a couple $100s to get in started. We do credit score optimization. And for people who are starting up, we do business setup as well to help them get everything set up, because there's a lot of things that need to be taking place to justify getting business funding in this way. But mostly it's that credit score. So we do the credit score optimization that covers that. And then all of our rest fees in the backside is a percentage of the total of the funding you get as it comes out, paid out with the credit that we got for you.
Gotcha. Makes sense. I am interested to hear, your answers to these next three questions because of I asked the same three questions to every guest at the end, but I'm really interested to hear your answers because of your military background, your and service as a firefighter, your open and documented struggle with mental health, and by the way, I have too. I have had some very dark times in my life, and I think guys like you and I need to talk about that more. And then you going on this personal journey and having this awakening and this enlightenment, and then now you're in business. It just makes it fascinating to anticipate how you're going to answer these next three questions. So the first one is, what book recently in the last 10 years, I don't know, when you were 10 years old, doesn't matter, did you read and you set it down and you said, whoa, almost like the Matrix where you couldn't unsee it? Once you see it and once you know it, you can't unknow it. What book, I'm asking you the question slightly different than I asked some of the guests, but I'm just curious, knowing, and you've learned about fiat currency and what a crazy joke that whole thing is. What book did you read that you just said, whoa, I almost wish I didn't read that because it's kind of messed me up some. What book?
Yeah, that's a great question, Roger. So I'm going to answer this in a different way, probably. In
Sure.
a way I've kind of see my life as I live in like 4-year cycles.
Uh-huh.
And Marines, 4 years, firefighter, 4 years, 5 years traveling. So that was a little bit of a stretch, but that's just kind of how my life has been. And so there's been really pivotal. So I'll share a few pivotal books in there that really supported me. First would have been Man's Search for Meaning, which is what came through when I was really struggling. Well, I think I had decided, this was maybe like February. So yeah, I had just decided I was going to move to Costa Rica, and I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I read that book and it just really brought something deep within me. And also just seeing, anybody who hasn't read that book, it's deep and dense of the history and the raw human experience of going through unbelievably traumatic experiences, and the opportunity within that to decide to think differently. And I felt like I was on that path. And so anybody really struggling with the darkness right now, I think that book's an unbelievable book. And yeah, just so I know I'm cheating here a little bit, Roger, hope you don't mind.
No, this is great. This is great.
The next one I'll share, and I thought about another one, but I'll go here. And I think that I could have brought some stuff up. I know I do with you, and I totally respect that. I had to go through the process too. But the book that really helped me understand what I believe is kind of happening as far as U.S. history, uncomfortable U.S. history, is a book, and there's two of them actually. There's one called Fruit from a Poisonous Tree.
Okay.
That book really covers from the Constitution up until 1999. That guy he's a former Marine. He was a lawyer, and he cites all kinds of case law and U.S. code in well-researched, well-written documentation of the U.S. history that we know we're not taught about in school. And that really just like, oh, wow, this is unbelievable. And then the next one on top of that was, it's called Manual for Freedom, The Peaceful Sovereign's Path. That book is all more recent. It's essentially about the 2008 financial crisis and how the banks created that and what they did to do that and the inner workings, and also how the government and the banks are essentially one and the same, and they're working together to the way it's portrayed, and the way I believe now is to extract wealth from us, the people. And his solution, spoiler alert on this, is kind of like anticlimactic, but it was set up a trust. He goes through why and the history. And then at the end is like, the best way to protect yourself is to set up a trust. So practically, as a father, as someone who's interested in freedom, understanding the financial system itself, those two books really opened it up and then gave me a solution.
That's one of the better answers I've ever heard. I will ask you, have you ever read Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand?
Man, that sounds familiar, but I don't think I have.
It's like 800 pages. You wouldn't forget if you had. I know it sounds huge, but it's one of those books. It was written by a Russian immigrant in 1950, and it literally foretells the future of what we're living, from the economy, from politicians, from producers versus the looters, and it's one of those books where I can't unsee it now. I can't unsee it. And that's one I would share with you. And I think And is spelled AYN, Rand, R-A-N-D.
Yeah.
Amazing book. And then when you finish it, you think, wait, she wrote this in the 1950s? It's crazy. All right, a couple last questions. This one's a little different, but again, I'm fascinated with expecting your answer. We fast forward to the end of your life, and you've lived this rich, beautiful life. You've helped a lot of entrepreneurs. You've created wealth for your family, but your days come, and so we're at your funeral. You're looking down from above or from wherever, and there's a loved one is reading your eulogy, but they're only allowed, Jesse, they're allowed 3 words, and they don't have to be like 3 in a phrase, but just they can only choose 3 different words to describe your life and the life you lived and how they felt you impacted others, or these descriptors of you. What 3 words do you hope that person says that describes you?
What I'm hoping someone would think about me is that I loved fully and deeply.
Great. No wrong answer, right? That's great. That's great. A lot of times a guest will look at me like, how was that? I'm like, no, there's no wrong answer. There's no wrong answer. It's only your answer. And then lastly, you have been around you've been to a lot of places in the world. So you've seen a lot of different things. You've seen the wealthiest of wealthy countries. You've seen some of the poorest of developing nations. If I were to give you a magic wand, last question here. If I were to give you a magic wand, and Jesse, you could wave that magic wand tonight and make one change to the world is different in one major way, and it changes forever. You wave that magic wand tonight. When we wake up tomorrow morning, how is the world different according to Jesse?
Well, Roger, I had like 5 answers come all at once, so I'm like trying to siphon through it.
Sure.
Freedom is the one word for me, and if you don't mind,
yeah,
I'll share a little bit of like a poem almost that I wrote. Please. And what this is going to help me do is bring in 3 words, but I'm going to explain how they're connected.
Sure.
And it goes: life, love, and liberty are 3 words describing the same thing. Without liberty, there is no life. Without life, no liberty. Without either, there is no love. When you're free, you're loving life. And when you're loving life, you are alive. But when you're not, your heart might be beating, but you're the walking dead. And if you're dead, you're more easily controlled by evil. And right now, I believe evil forces are trying to restrict our freedom because they know that freedom is life and life is love. So when push comes to shove, if you stand for one thing in this world, let it be love. Love is freedom. Freedom is life. And this is our opportunity to see humanity come alive.
The most interesting answer I've ever had to that question. Wow. That's powerful. That's powerful. There are going to be people that want to get a hold of you after this, want to follow you, be part of your journey, understand how they could work with you as well. How would people do that? Where do they find you?
Yeah, the best spot is on Instagram or LinkedIn. Instagram, action_Jesse. LinkedIn is my name, Jesse Simpson, or Action Jesse. And then websites, abundancecodes.org. But anybody who this message resonated with or interested in learning more, I love having conversations, because what I believe we can do is open up a door of possibility that's simply not possible without abundance codes, which is why I feel it's an honor to stand in this position. So anybody who has any interest, shoot me a message on Instagram or LinkedIn. We'll love to have a conversation with you.
Love it. Love it. We'll put that in the show notes too, so people can just click right on it. Jesse, thank you for your time today. Thank you for answering some tougher questions, because some of the stuff I needed more clarity on, just so I could, as a host, understand it. And I appreciate that. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Roger. Excellent host. Thanks so much.
Thank you for tuning in to the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any of the resources that we mentioned during the podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. You can connect with me on any of the socials at Real Roger Martin. And be sure to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thanks again for tuning in.